Welcome to Soul Conversations with Z, Healing in the Raw, where we keep it raw, real, and unfiltered. I'm Zachyra Rodriguez, a trauma specialist and marriage psychotherapist, and this is a space where we dive deep into the messy, yet beautiful and often difficult parts of life. Here we challenge ourselves to face our fears and dig deeper into self-discovery. I'm no newbie. I've navigated many rocky roads and consider myself a recovered traumaholic. Life hasn't been easy, but I truly believe that everything happens for a cause greater than ourselves. Whether you're navigating with grief or grappling with trauma, healing from attachment injuries, or working on your marriage, we're here to unpack it all. No sugarcoating, just honest conversations about the struggles we face and the growth that comes from them. You matter, you were loved, even before your existence, and you're created to do great things. So grab a seat, my friend, take a long, deep breath, and let's get real together. So let's begin. All right, everyone, welcome. Christian, welcome. So to everyone watching this morning, this is Soul Conversations with Z. I'm Zachyra Rodriguez, your host, and I have the privilege to be with my friend and colleague, Mr. Christian. So Christian, today I know we've been talking about a little bit behind the scenes about this topic that we're so looking forward to pretty much engaging in. But before we do that, I want to tell the audience a little bit about what it's about, who you are, and then you can share a little bit about also who you are. So today's topic is called the secret struggle, right, with men, porn, and faith in the church. And I've been so looking forward to actually having this conversation. I think we spoke about this maybe like sometime a few years ago that we were hopefully going to be able to have this conversation. But let's talk a little bit about who you are. So, Christian, you have been a therapist for about 9 years, right? That you have like clinical experience. But prior to that, you were actually working for 26 years, I believe, with Merrill Lynch, and you were with them. And I'm just reading a little bit about your bio and Bank of America. So there was a layoff, 2021. And then afterwards, that actually transitioned you into becoming a full-time counselor. I know you're married, you
That
have
is correct.
twins, right? So tell us a little bit about, about you.
So, like you're right, Zashi. By the way, thank you for having me on here. This is a long time coming, this conversation. We have definitely discussed it more than a couple of times
Mhm.
behind the scenes. And we both have very strong opinions about this particular topic for good reason. It's an important topic to go over. And about myself, it's kind of funny how I was doing moonlighting, essentially going to school at night, going for my graduate degree in counseling while working Merrill Lynch during the day, and trying to find time to be a husband and a father at the same time. So didn't really leave a lot of free time to do much of anything else other than that, which just took up all my time. But I will say this, when I was going to school, and I wouldn't do this over again, by the way, because it was just so hectic and
You
crazy.
can do
But
it over
at the same
again.
time,
Mhm.
uh,
I said, so you wouldn't do it over
yeah,
again.
I wouldn't do it over again. It was really, it was a lot. But but God was with me the whole time. I mean, He just gave me this calm and peace throughout all of the crazy, and I was able to focus on what I needed to focus on. And kind of speaking to the topic at hand that we're going to be talking about, I would have never been able to accomplish what I accomplished if I wasn't sober. If I
Mm,
wasn't sober, there was no way, with the challenges that were presented towards me, I would have never been able to deal with the challenges that lay before me. And this includes, my wife actually wasn't in my bio. My wife in 2013 and 2014 was battling breast cancer.
mm.
So, so I had to drop out of the program for a year because I just couldn't stay in the program and take care of my wife and take care of my kids. So I had to do that. And God was like, did like a Jonah on me, because I almost thought about quitting the program, because I was like, I'll just stay at Merrill Lynch and go up the tiers. Maybe I'm not meant to be a counselor.
Wow.
And then God just was like, no, you're going back. And I'm not going to get into the whole story because we don't have time for that. But I went back, and here I am as a counselor.
Wow. My goodness. And you've been doing this now for 9 years.
Yeah, since 2017, I've been doing clinical counseling. Yeah, first it was part time, and then like you said, when I got laid off in 2021, an active Providence, because I was actually happy to get laid off because I got a year and a half severance. So I was year and a half severance and working my practice at the same time. So that was a very huge blessing from the Lord.
Yeah, I definitely understand the transition, because I myself working in corporate America for so many years and transitioning into becoming a clinician, it's like, wow. So I could relate. I could definitely relate.
Mhm.
All right, so let's jump into our topic, right? That secret struggle. And when we talk about the secret struggle in men in porn, that is such a secret topic, that a lot of men, they pretty much they hide away from, they struggle. So as a male clinician, why do you think that so many men actually struggle in silence when it does come to pornography? Because we talk about all these other issues like anxiety, depression, they're not feeling well, life transitions. But when it comes to porn itself, why do you think that there's like so much silence behind that?
So uh, we've talked about this before, but obviously not on the podcast. But it's layered. There's different reasons for that. One of them can be because there's a lot of shame and embarrassment involved. And everybody kind of knows that reason. That's kind of like the popular reason. There's shame and there's embarrassment, and they don't want no one to know what's going on. But there's also yeah, depression, anxiety becomes like an elaborate coping mechanism as well. Like it's a form of escapism where I get triggered by whatever's going on. I had a bad day at work. I was stuck in traffic. I had an argument with my wife, or whatever, whatever type of stimulus or trigger in their environment will give them that built-in excuse to go over there and just escape, and they feel like it's almost like something they deserve. And so there's not really so much shame and embarrassment there. It's hiding behavior. They know what's wrong. They don't want no one really knowing what they're doing, because if someone knew what they were doing, then they would have to be accountable to it, and they were accountable to it, then they would have to change.
Yeah.
So it's not like a neat black and white answer. It's very layered, and everybody's different.
Yeah, and even with their closest friends, right, and their spouses or their pastors, because the struggle is real and it seems like they have to kind of like live like a double life, right? Because silence is
Hmm.
after a while becomes like part of the struggle itself because now they're hiding, right? They're hiding behind all
Hmm.
these people that are supposed to be pretty much people that are supposed to be safe. So I
Hmm.
get what you're saying is that it's not black and white, but I can only imagine how many men today are struggling out there.
There was a survey taken. It was during COVID. I think it was early COVID, maybe 2020, 21, something like that. And it was done within the church. And it was a pretty robust survey. And it said, again, this was the numbers that came out. There was 60% of men that admitted, the key word, admitted within the church throughout the whole country, that admitted to having an issue, not an addiction, an issue with porn. Language is very important here, okay? Quite frankly, Zashi, I can't prove this, but I think it's closer to 90%.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Almost every person I talk to, every male I talk to, has an, you know, issue with porn.
Yeah, that
Right. And they don't want to talk about it though. Yeah. They don't want to talk about it. They go, this has nothing to do with my anxiety, has nothing to do with my depression, has nothing to do with my OCD, has nothing to do with my intimate issues with my wife. Like they don't want to touch that. They think like it's a sacred cow almost. Like, let's talk about this stuff. I'll talk about this all day, but I don't really want to talk about that.
yeah.
I don't. And they get like almost like defensive about it.
So what are some of the emotional needs though that are going on underneath the layer of all these different symptoms, right? That you're talking about, these different disorders like the anxiety, depression, like what are some of those emotional needs that men are looking for?
So what happens is that, again, like going back to the layered. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to answer your question, but it's just not a simple way to answer it. There are some men, a lot of men will look for a connection this way, like that there's some type of lack of intimacy within the marriage and their relationship. They don't feel close to anybody, but they don't see that their behaviors also can be causing that disconnect. But so even though they may or may not be causing that disconnect, they go to pornography to find some level of connection, even though it's brief and even though it's temporary, and obviously it's not healthy.
Absolutely. And I think also, especially in the church, they're struggling, but they also love God. You know,
Mhm.
there's a
Yeah.
huge disconnect with that because we're not talking about it from the pulpit. We're not really addressing it. So men do tend to live in shame, and I don't know. I just wonder a lot of times, like, why is it that we're not having these conversations from the pulpit about pornography?
So, so my opinion on that one, and again, I don't want to speak for all churches, but I think enough churches do this. It's not within their scope. Like they may be more mission oriented or whatever it is that the church is geared towards with their resources. They don't have they won't dedicate any resources towards this particular problem, right?
Yeah.
That'll be that they've built an excuse. And then here's the other thing too. A lot of times the leadership of the church has the problem too, and they know if we start having recovery programs here, they may not take long for them to come to me and realize that they're going to expose my issue, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
I
Right.
want to stay in the dark over here.
Yeah. So we're still actually feeding this monster because leadership, to a certain degree, is not even able to say, hey, I also have the issue and I also need deliverance from it. I also need to go through this recovery process in order for us to have a healthy and emotionally, healthy church.
Yeah,
It's hiding
yeah,
in
yeah.
something.
So one one example I'll give, I was me and my partner who were leading the men's group at my old church when I was up in Jersey. We were trying to set up something, a thing to talk to the youth, right? To the teens, because we all know teens have an issue with this.
Yeah.
That's not a secret, right? And the youth pastor who was leading it at the time blocked us from doing it. And I was like,
Wow.
why? Why would you not allow it? I'm not charging money. We're doing this on a volunteer basis. We want to commit to do this weekly or every other week or something, have curriculum in place and try to educate and give the teens a space to be able to come to us about this because they live in shame.
Wow.
Teens definitely live in shame and embarrassment, like that no one's going to be there for them. We wanted to provide that space for them, and we were blocked. We could not get past it. We
Wow.
didn't get any cooperation. And I think that's a microcosm, in my opinion, a microcosm of what's going on in the church today.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. I've seen I remember watching one time this it was like a documentary and they were talking about pornography and in the church. And they said almost exactly the same thing as far as like because of the fact that many, leadership sometimes they're also struggling. And it's difficult because I get it. As a leader, come being able to say, hey, me too, but that's where the true transformation and true healing really began. So my question to you is like, what do you think churches can do to begin to break the stigma and also be able to, allow our men to be able to open up without having shame?
So I'll start it off by answering it this way before I get. I'm going to answer your question, but I just think it'd be good to start off here, then segue into that. In my group, my recovery group back in Jersey, we had on occasion we would have a pastor bounce in and out of there who had issues. I didn't know this person or these people. We didn't know them. They would drive like an hour to our group because they didn't want no one. They didn't want to run into anybody they knew because of church discipline, right? So that's part of the problem too. Part of the problem is there's no grace
Mm,
towards these pastors and leadership that's supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to be sinless. They're supposed to be make the best decision every time and they can't make any mistakes. So therein lies in the problem, in my opinion.
right.
Okay. So they're men just like everybody else, but just because they happen to be a pastor and they struggle with this particular sin, then they will be tossed out, lose their job, and may not be able to get another job if everybody else catches wind why they were kicked out of the church.
Mm.
To me, and this is my theological viewpoint on this, if they would just allow a repentant pastor to be able to work on, or a repentant elder to work on their stuff, I think you would see what you asked. I think that would change. And until that changes, the dynamic we have right now
Absolutely.
won't change, in my opinion.
Yeah, the cycle continues. The cycle continues, shame continues, guilt continues, and they're on this, roller coaster road just going around and around and nothing is happening. Nothing is changing, you know.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
okay.
But I think it's also twofold. It's like they 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 fear for to lose their job, but also I've dealt with men like this too, where not just pastors, but men in general, they don't want to stop.
Okay. So
Like we all talk, we all talk about the shame and the embarrassment, and that's a real thing. That is, there are many men who want to stop, and they can't. They feel hopeless. There's definitely that contingent. I don't want to say there's not, because there definitely is, but there is also a contingent that will go to church, serve on mission trips, do all these great things, and everybody say, "Wow, that is a model of a Christian over there," but has this hidden sin, and they don't want to stop doing it either.
okay. So
So that's why I'm saying it's layered. It's not just this or that. It's multifaceted.
right. So I want to go back to that. So for these men, right? Because we have those that they're really struggling, right? That's what it sounds like you're saying. They're really, really struggling. They want to stop. There's also shame in between that. So it's very difficult for them to actually look for healing. But then we have these that they are pretty much living a double life. Everything seems fine. They are pretty much considered, an elder in the church, or they have some type of leadership, or just, they go to church. So then what do you think is the reason why that they don't want to stop? What about this?
Well, okay, so you're asking me, why don't they like they have the struggle, but it's not they still want to stop. They just don't want to stop.
They
Right,
just
right.
don't want to.
Because I think they enjoy what brief, fleeting pleasure it gives them.
Right.
There's this fantasy world where there's no expectations. They have complete control. That's what I'm saying, where it's beyond a support group. You have to go into intensive therapy for this and be honest with your therapist to be able to go into this, because if you the ones who actually wanted to stop and the ones who used to not want to stop, pattern I see is they had trauma when they were a child and neglected, very tumultuous childhood growing up, not having good connections. And a lot of times, what I find out, anywhere from the ages of 8 to 12, um, porn seems to be their go-to to help them through these tough times. And it just becomes this companion, if you will, throughout their life. Whenever they never, the porn's never rejected them, porn's never said no to them, and it's just a very easy place to go. And that's why one of the reasons why I don't think they want to stop, because it's always been there for them.
Right. Right. So it's kind of like a comfort for them as well. So
Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And what happens too is just a little more detail with that. Um, when I deal with an addict coming in, whether they admit it or not, but I see the behavior, I won't talk about the behavior so much, because what ends up happening is, let's just say they stop watching porn. That's a presenting problem, right?
Yeah,
Then they may start drinking, or they may start smoking weed, or eating a lot of sweets. So it'll just go someplace else. So the problem moves.
absolutely.
Codependency is the problem.
Yeah.
They can't sit in their emotional discomfort. That's really the crux of the issue. They're uncomfortable. They don't like it. And so porn or gambling or drinking or smoking or eating or buying something, whatever it is, provides that temporary fleeting comfort.
Right.
That's the real problem.
Right. Right. Yeah, and pornography itself, it doesn't just affect them, the individual, it affects the whole entire family, right? Even in the intimacy part, when we start talking about, even when, let's just say, they do come together with their spouses, then how do you see that also affecting them? Because I think that men, because of the fact that they have been so conditioned now after watching porn for such a long time, it's so unrealistic in terms of what the actual act is going to look like. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So what ends up happening, like we've all heard the terms fetishes and things of that nature, and then the expectations, they kind of want their wives or significant others to perform in a certain way. And again, in porn, there's no rejection there. It's just, it's like this, it just happens. It's easy. Whereas in real life, there's no connection. And then they just expect their wives to just like, well, I want it now and let's do this. And oh, by the way, I would like to do it this way or that way. And whatever fetishes they come up with. And there's some kind of disturbing fetishes that are occurring over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. That's kind of made porn even worse than it was before, like when me and you were growing up. I'm not saying porn was ever good. I'm just saying it's kind of evolved into more damaging things where it's not helping, it's not making it conducive for intimacy. And another thing is too, there's a term called emotional anorexia. It's a
Mhm.
real thing. Okay. And what ends up happening was when a man is addicted to porn. I'm not talking about somebody who just watches it once in a while, like here or there. You won't really see what I'm about to tell you occur. But
Okay.
when you start seeing like he can't connect, he can't handle a tough conversation, he makes light of or is humorous when the seriousness of something comes up. He can't sit in the moment.
Mm.
That's a sign, or has hair trigger temper and emotional self-regulation. Is not that they just can't do it. These are all signs of emotional anorexia, which is linked to addiction
Mhm.
and obviously porn as well.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing some light on that, because just thinking about what you were just saying as far as like the emotional anorexia and even with their spouses, how difficult that could be also for them to be able to even engage. So here's the wife trying to even create, emotional connection, but even with that, they're not even able and capable of doing.
Hmm.
That's why we see so much disruption also in marriages because of porn. That has actually leaked in to the marriage bedroom.
So when say if someone starts watching porn from between say like 11 years old or something like that, right? And they haven't stopped. They just been doing it, and say they're in their 40s or their 50s, and they come into marriage counseling, and there's all these communication issues, intimacy issues, just a lot of problems within the relationship. Once I start talking to the man, and when I start hearing what the wife says, and I hear what the husband has to say, what happens is, and no one likes to talk about this either, is there is research out there that says that once you start engaging in porn on a regular basis, it kind of transforms your brain chemistry and it stunts your emotional development. It
Mhm,
stunts it. So if you start watching at 11, you're going to have the emotional maturity of someone who's in middle school.
mhm.
So when you're talking to them and even if they don't admit there's an addiction problem, you start hearing, that's what I'm saying, you start hearing their behavior, how they react to things, how's their emotional intelligence, um, all these different things you could just kind of see. So they don't have to really tell you, you kind of know just from hearing the stories from the wife and the husband explaining himself too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's just say right now we have a wife that's listening to you and she's like, "Oh my goodness, I think that my husband may have some sort of, addiction, or maybe he's addicted to porn." What would you tell
Mhm.
that person that's listening out right now in terms of, that the husband is actually struggling, with porn?
Right. So if he wants help, you can try to help him get the help that he needs. So kind of encourage him along the way, maybe hold him a little accountable. But if he doesn't want the help, there's really nothing you can do other than getting help for yourself. I deal with this all the time, this question. It happens all the time. I'll be sitting there with a couple, and I know the guy is addicted to pornography, and he sits there and says he's not. And I'll tell the wife, I said, well, then he's not addicted to pornography. She goes, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, that's because that's what he said. Well, then we kind of go back and forth. And I say, until he admits, I'm not trying to be wise guy, until he admits that he has a problem, he's not going to get that right help for it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So to our listeners, I've known Christian for quite some time. So I'm just going to segue here for a little bit. And Christian is the type of person that he tells it like it is. And he does tell it like it is. And some people do have a problem with that because it is so true what you're saying. Because I do believe that couples come into set to therapy, not really understanding how severe this issue is. And it's one of the worst addictions that exists out there. And even piggybacking back off what you were just saying is that it alters your brain. And there was a research that was done and they showed actually a brain, right? A person with a normal brain, not involved with pornography or any types of addiction, and then they showed another one. And the level of white mass, that was being demonstrated in that brain, I mean, it was mind-boggling. I was like, "Oh my gosh," I couldn't believe the effects that pornography has on an individual brain. So we have to be very mindful of that.
It creates new neural pathways.
Absolutely.
And and with that, I mean, if a behavior is causing new neural pathways that shouldn't be there, it's probably something you should revisit and think about. Maybe I should try to do something about it. But what happens is they become so embroiled in it. It's their own little world. It's kind of like, how do I put this in a metaphorical way? It's almost like their man cave,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like you trying to take away their man cave, their space, because in their minds, some of them, not all of them, some of them think, I'm not really doing anything wrong. I'm not doing anything illegally. I'm not doing anything to harm anybody. I'm in the privacy of my own home doing this. I'm not really hurt. So they have this narrative in their mind where they don't really think it's a problem,
Right.
and they lack insight, meaning they don't see how that behavior impacts themselves and the people around them. They just don't see. They think whatever's going wrong in their lives, yeah, it may be a problem, but I don't think it has anything to do with this. So why am I going to do anything about it?
Absolutely. So, can a marriage heal when there is a spouse that is engaged in pornography? And there, because that's a trust issue.
Yes.
So you
Yes,
would.
absolutely. And I've seen marriages heal from this.
Mhm.
It's when there's truly a repentant heart on the man's part. But also on the woman's part, there's got to be a forgiveness piece. If she chooses to stay after being betrayed in this way, if she chooses to stay, she has to give him space to regain trust. And sometimes that's a very hard part in the reconciliation process. It's very difficult. And I've seen also marriages, and I'm sure you have too, that fall apart as a result of this, but they do heal when the husband shows a true repentance that he admits what he's done is wrong. He wants to get the help that he needs. He's being accountable to her. He's listening to whatever pathway of to regain trust she lays out for him that is subject to change. He will try to adhere to it the best way possible. So yes, I have seen it, but there's a definite intentionality about it on both the husband and the wife.
Yeah, and I think that trust is like that big, keyword. How do we rebuild trust after, pornography has actually sneaked into your bedroom, or maybe it
Mm.
was from the beginning. And it's hard because there was a case that was presented many years ago about this couple, and they were working through this. The wife was aware that the husband, he was addicted to porn, and he had promised that he was going through, seeing his therapist and everything else. And she finds out, I don't know how, that this man was actually masturbating and even watching porn about 10 times a day. 10 times a day. Now, he works from home, so of course he had the ability to actually engage in these type of behaviors, but it was insane just to, realize how she was trusting him because they were working through this, but in reality, it's like you said, like he did not at that point. He was having a very difficult time stopping and there was no accountability. And that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that accountability is huge with pornography, with masturbation. It is huge. And if there's no accountability, and if we have couples telling us, or one of the people in the marriage saying, like, oh, yeah, yeah, I can do it on my own. No, you can't do it on your own. You just can't. There has to be some
Yeah.
accountability. Yeah. So talk on that.
So accountability, I agree with you, Zasha, 100%. You're on point. Accountability is key, but it's the type of accountability also. I don't, and again, this may be controversial what I'm about to say, and believe me, I've gotten into arguments with other people about this, so you don't have to believe what I'm about to say. I don't think the wife should be the accountability partner.
Oh,
That's not her job.
absolutely
Yeah.
not.
No, but I have wives come to me and say, listen, I want to know this, I want to know. I go, you're not his accountability partner. It's going to overwhelm you. I go, this is not your problem. It's his problem that's causing obviously distress in your life. Okay. But if you're going to stay in the marriage and work through this together, you cannot hear his inner thought narrative. You can't hear all this granular details. You shouldn't have to know what triggered him today in the mall when he went to go get something or at the supermarket. That's what accountability partners are for, and you're not equipped for that. You're not supposed to be doing that. And that's always a hard conversation.
Yeah. So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that because I kind of agree with you and there's another part of me that I'm kind of like, I would want to ask you about this. So let's just say when you're doing couples counseling, because when I have couples that do come in and we do have, maybe one of the partners that he's struggling, I do
Hmm.
believe that having the person, that counterpart say, you know what, right now I'm just having a difficult time, I'm struggling, not going into details. But so the wife can be aware that it's nothing that she did nor anything else, but right now he's just struggling. Right. And then
Hmm.
his accountability. So for me, when I'm doing therapy, for me, that's huge as far as, you should be able, especially when we're talking about being able to connect emotionally, to let your spouse know, like, listen, right now, I'm really going through a tough time. I just need some space, whatever the case is. But what's not okay is for the other person to just separate and the wife has no idea
Hmm.
what's happening. But yes, I agree with you in terms of the other person should not, the spouse should not be the accountability. The spouse should not be the one
Hmm.
hearing all these details about, oh, well, yes, I went to the store and I saw this and this is what happens. So that part, as far as like, not having to be able to explain the details, I do agree. But I do believe that the spouse should be able to tell the wife, hey, I'm struggling, and being able to have that
Right.
form of communication with the wife.
I agree with you with that part. The problem is when this is what I've seen, right? So we agree to that. Okay, well, the husband will let the wife know that he's struggling. I'm just having a bad day. Meaning, I'm not going to go into details because you know what that means. Okay, it's inferred, right? That's what it means. But they didn't want to know other things. When was the last time you were on the internet? And then they start going playing detective, and then it causes that separation, right? So they can't. They have a hard time adhering to those boundaries. So they're not comfortable with those boundaries. So once they hear struggle, okay, that's what he's admitting to. He's lied to me before, so that means this could be happening again, and it causes more problems.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying. So while I agree with that, if they're able to adhere to those boundaries, that would be great, but that doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. It
That
happened. I definitely agree with you.
that's why I always say you need a support group. You need your home group, maybe have a backup group just in case the one group can't meet. What they talk about 90 meetings in 90 days. I don't agree with that. I just think I know it's a great slogan. It's not really realistic. Okay. You need to really just commit to the program once or twice a week. It's suffice enough in lieu with combination with therapy at the same time, if someone knows what they're talking about, right? Not just addictions, like I told you before. The codependency is what's really driving this, the codependent wound. Everybody goes with the presenting problem up here with the porn. Let's attack the porn. Yes, we're going to talk about that, but that's not going to be the lion's share.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. So look, if you heal the codependent wounds, usually plural, then you're going to start to see change in the presenting behavior of the addiction.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for that. But yeah, as far as boundaries, we do find that there are spouses that it is difficult for them, right? Because their story is their story and their truth in terms of their experiences, with pornography has been very, very challenging. But then you also have these spouses that they have decided to stay and they have to understand also that in order for trust to be rebuilt, we have to start somewhere, because pornography also could be considered, cheating. So I want to ask you
Yeah.
that question. Do you believe that pornography is cheating?
So I get asked that question a lot, as you can imagine, right? So this is kind of how I look at it. I'm going to give you kind of two answers here. Okay.
Mhm.
If I look at it from the biblical perspective, Jesus says, if you just think in your mind about having inappropriate sexual activity with another woman or someone from the opposite sex, same thing for a woman, for a man, then it's adultery. So using that definition, of course, it's a sin. It's cheating because it falls under the adultery umbrella. But that being said, if we're looking at this from an earthly law perspective, it's not cheating, right? Because, and again, I'm only giving you this perspective because I deal with men about that. We argue about this a lot. Okay, men think I'm not touching anybody, I'm not talking to anybody. It's just a screen. I never met this person, never meet this person. So it's about as it's a cold relationship. So they don't believe it's cheating. It's kind of like men who've told me, and I'm sure you've heard this before. Well, I don't think oral sex is cheating.
Oh my
You
God.
only think intercourse is cheating. Oh yeah, I've heard this many times before. Oral sex is not. If they receive oral sex from a woman, in their minds, they don't feel guilty about it, and they don't think they did anything wrong. They don't think it's cheating.
Right.
Okay, so to answer your question, and hope I'm answering it is, yes, I have one definition of it, but I have to get into their world to sit there and understand why they don't think it's wrong,
Mhm.
right? And I kind of gave you that. So from an earth, so I have a woman, a wife will say, "Well, do you think it's cheating?" Like me, like it's important for me to validate that. And I go, I told him, and I just told you, but he doesn't think it's cheating. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter what I think, right? You think it's cheating for the reasons you described. He does not think it's cheating because in his mind, if I don't think it's cheating, then I can keep doing it.
Absolutely. It's a scapegoat. It's a scapegoat.
Yeah.
I've had that I've heard, people say, "Oh, no, oral sex is not cheating. Oh, pornography is not cheating." But when we look at it from a biblical stance, the word of God is the word of God, and that we can't change.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's in there for a reason, and some things we like
Right.
to pick and choose and say, "Okay, well, this is okay and this is not okay." Now, if they believe that it's not cheating, okay, that's what you choose to believe, right? Because in life, it's all about choices and decisions. That's what you choose to
Yeah.
believe. However,
Hmm.
based upon what this says, that is cheating. So, I
Right.
I hear you. I hear you.
Right. But if I start going down that road with them and try to convince them that it's cheating when they're not there yet, they usually just leave. They don't come back and they just continue to do what they're doing. You can't, like the wife just wants me to fix him like right there, get him to understand what we're trying to say. I'm like, you can't do it that way. Then they think I'm being soft on him and they think I'm taking sides. I go, can you just trust the process here? He doesn't think it's cheating right now. It doesn't mean I agree with him. It just means we're trying to identify why he thinks this way.
Right. Right.
Part of the problem is the wife will jump down the husband's throat, then he retreats, goes back into his hole. This is why I don't talk about anything, because she starts yelling and screaming at me about this. And I understand why she's yelling and screaming at him. I get it, because she doesn't want him cheating on her anymore, because that's what she thinks it is, and but he doesn't think it is.
Mhm. Right, and until the person decides to really understand and there's that awareness, because it starts first with awareness. Until that
Mhm.
awareness actually happens, it's gonna be
Mhm.
constant friction
Oh
because the
yeah,
wife is saying
definitely.
one thing, the husband is saying another thing, right? The word of God is saying one thing, and
Hmm.
pretty much at odds here, you know?
Right.
What are some of the misconceptions, let's just say, after overcoming pornography, that are out there?
So give me a little bit more. Like when you say misconceptions about after you overcome it, like a stigma or something like that.
So let's just say people that they were struggling with pornography, now they are going to support groups and, they're doing all these different things, right? But there's also some misconceptions. So, for example, I can tell you that, let's just say we have a husband that he was addicted to porn and now all of a sudden he feels that he started going to these groups and, he's doing well. So that's pretty much what I want you to talk on. If you've had any experience as far as that with these misconceptions, because if you think about an alcoholic. If you're an
Hmm.
alcoholic and you think that you can just walk up into, a bar or something or wherever there's liquor and not be tempted, you're going to be tempted, right? That's a
Oh
misconception.
yeah. Okay.
So that's pretty
Yeah.
much
Yeah. All right. So here's the thing. When you finally admit that you have a problem with like pornography for the sake of this question, your life's changed. Okay. Like for instance, like in our culture, the bachelor party, going to strip clubs, right? You can't do that anymore. I mean, you shouldn't be doing it anyway, regardless of an addiction, but like that seems to be a popular thing within our culture, right? Where they do things like that. And you can't do that as a recovering porn sex addict. You just can't do things like that. You can't watch sex scenes from a movie that may not be porn, but has sex scenes in it, right? So your whole life changes after that. So we watch a rated R movie and it's a great movie, it's an action film, but then it has a sex scene. You can't look at it because it can trigger you. You can have sobriety for 10 years and it can still trigger you. So you gotta be careful. You can't have this laissez-faire, like almost bordering arrogant attitude like I've arrived.
Yes.
It's like the thorn, it'll always be the thorn in your side, to use the word.
Yeah. So there's so many things that I want to say about that, right? So it's kind of like what the word of God says that, if your right eye, right, causes you to sin, you got to pluck it out, right? Not literally.
Yeah, yeah.
You need
Right.
to be away from that because obviously there is something that's going to trigger you. And you said it. I love what you just said. You said something has changed now, right? Something in
Mhm.
your life now has been altered. So you need to be very, very mindful because this is where the enemy comes in and he sneaks in
Yep.
and he's going to bring
Mhm.
7 more demons with him, and it's gonna be much more stronger. But people
Yep.
fail to understand that, and I think that the misconceptions do come when I think that there's recovery, but then we also forget that recovery is for life. That's an
Yeah,
ongoing matter. You have to be in
that's right.
recovery every single day, and I truly believe that couples believe that this is just a one and done thing. Okay, I went to see Christian, I went to see Sashi, and that's it. We're good. We saw them for a year or 2. I was with my support groups. We spoke about it. It's done. It's not done. It's not
Mhm.
done.
Mhm.
Un-
Right. I agree.
yes. Oh my goodness. Wow, that's good. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's kind of like with alcohol, like what you said, drugs. Like if you're a recovering drug addict, you're not going to go to a party and play poker with people smoking weed, right? It's common sense stuff. It's the same thing with porn. Like there's just certain things you can't do anymore.
Right.
Nothing.
Yes. So I heard a pastor a few years ago, and he was talking about, he was addicted also to, being promiscuous and everything else. And he shared about how he was delivered from it. So you can be delivered. Yes, you can. However, recovery is for life. I want to repeat that. You can be
Yeah.
delivered. Recovery is for life. You have to be very mindful that there's an issue. So he spoke
Hmm.
about that he will not stay in his office. Like if there's a female working there and it's just him and her, he's like, "No, I gotta go." Because
Yeah.
of the fact that he knows, not that he's gonna jump in to bed with the woman right away, but he said because he knows that he has that little sty in his eye. And the
Hmm.
scar is still there, and that's what's very important because we get the cut, but the scar will remain,
Hmm.
right? And he said there's a
Yep.
possibility that I can go ahead and I can start to wonder. So because of that, I will literally leave the office and not be with this woman alone. He said, not that I'm
Hmm.
attracted to her, but I know for a fact that that's where the enemy can come in. He can sneak in and all
Hmm.
of a sudden now I'm entangled. And that's the misconception that I think it's so important to drive home, to people that have been struggling with addictions.
Hmm. Absolutely. No, I agree with you. Doug, do you have a question for me there? I wasn't sure if you had a question.
No, it's just good stuff. I'm just kind of just, pausing there because
I
there's
agree with you. I agree. I agree with you. Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
And so the thing is, like for me, for instance, but people will say, "What's your Facebook? What's your Instagram?" I don't have any social media footprint. I have a YouTube, not an account, but I just watch YouTube videos. That's all the social media that I have because I know where my scars are, and I refuse to ever. And my wife knows this. She knows all this. And I go, she goes, "What? It's been a long time. I want you just." I go, "I'm not going there."
Yeah.
If anybody wants to contact me, they have my cell number. People in my life who they know how to contact me. I don't need social media, Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, whatever the ones that are on out there. I don't need that. But I also know my scars. If I were to go into that world, I'm putting myself in a very precarious situation, and I don't want to be tested that way. I don't think I'm strong enough to handle that responsibility. And for a man, you have to have that type of humility to sit there and admit, I am weak here. I can't handle it. So therefore, I'm not doing it. And I shared that with some of my male clients, what I just shared with you, to help them to understand that just because we got a handle on this, it doesn't mean we're okay to do this now after a certain amount of time. There's just certain weaknesses that we have that are just always going to be weaknesses.
Yeah. Yeah. That is
That
so
makes sense?
absolutely. It's so, so true. So, I'm hearing you, right? And for me, it used to be cursing, right? So I used
Mhm.
to and it's very different, I understand, but that's just, my scar, right? In the past, as far as like I had a very, very filthy mouth. And, this was before my Jesus days. And it was to the point that I could curse you out in a minute, Christian. You could tell me something and it was just like it wasn't just, like speaking on a regular basis. It was like I would just become very angry and then just curse you out, cut you up like no tomorrow with curse words. So for me, I know that I have to be mindful of that. I cannot go into so when I, into that behavior because when I hear even people, cursing and stuff like that's okay for you, but for me it's not because I know that I was healed from that, so I can't because it used to get really ugly. I would cut you up with words and just spit you out and didn't even just, continue walking and just forget about you. And yeah, so we all have to be very, very mindful of the different scars that we all carry. And I think that is so important because this is how people keep repeating these, different types of, behaviors over and over because they haven't, number one, been delivered from the root of that codependency that you were talking about. And two, they've gone through the process of recovery, or restoration, but they think that they've arrived. And we arrive the day when we get to see Jesus Christ. Right. Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness, this has been such a great conversation. I could keep going and going and going, but I know that we do have to wrap up. So, to the men that are listening out there, Christian, that are like, oh my gosh, maybe we touch kind of like a little nerve. What message do you think that you would give that person that's listening and that they're, really battling with pornography and in silence? What would you say to them right now?
So what I would say to them is, why do you want to actually stop doing this? You need your own type of mission statement. So you can sit there and say, I have this kind of struggle, but you don't really want to stop. But if you truly want to stop doing this and you're really truly in silence, you isolated yourself, just admit that you actually want to get help for this. And if you do want to get help for this, you can go to SA, Sex Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the secular one. We can celebrate recoveries in every major city. Seems to be every major city, every state now. That's Christian-based 12-step program. You reach out to that and just try going into that. Like you don't have to pay to go in there. There's no membership fees or anything. Just go in there and start talking to people about it. People who have similar struggles. Now, Celebrate Recovery is all different addictions, not just porn and sex addiction. Okay, but it's still the same type of thing that they're working on there. You're going to have to take the initiative to do that. 'Cause I would say to go to your pastor, but maybe if your pastor's dealing with it, they may not be able to give you the right advice, right? The pastor's not going to tell you, right? So they may be suffering in silence too. So I would say you're going to have to take the initiative to go to one of these groups and just take away the stigma a little bit, meaning like I'm not alone in this. There's so many people who have this problem, and sometimes that helps to lower your walls a little bit. No hearing, just sit there in the meetings. Don't even say anything. Just listen to other people's check-ins and their stories so that you can gain some confidence into trying to tackle this very real issue.
Yeah, that's so good. And it sounds like what you're saying is that, you have to be able to acknowledge that there's an issue and then admit it and then go. Because we can't just sit there and not do anything about it. Like
Yeah.
we have to do something about it, because it goes back to that as a man, we're fragile. We're human beings. So you are going to fail if you don't fail to plan, right? If you don't plan to you don't fail to plan. So it's just so, so difficult for, you to do this on your own. You can't do it on your own. You need support. And I love what you also said as far as like we need to be in this community and this support system because alone you can't do it. Yeah.
and you have to find the right sponsor. You, so somebody could have a long, 30-year sobriety, 20-year sobriety, and go, wow, I want this person. There has to be a personality match.
Okay.
You have to have that chemistry. One of the reasons why this is such a struggle, and I tell men, please don't let this be the reason why you don't get the help that you need. If you can't find a sponsor right away, just keep going to find the right group and keep at it and listening to people's stories. Just talking, engage while you're there, and just pray for the right sponsor to come along. Because I can tell you, I've heard a lot of stories, too many stories, where the sponsor turned them off. They were too harsh. They were just too much for them, too rigid, whatever the case may be. And I wasn't there to hear the sponsor story. I'm just hearing the addict story, right? And they just stop going and they go right back into their addiction again. So it's an important choice. But be patient with it. Pray for the right match for your sponsor. But that sponsor is going to be like finding gold. It's going to give you the encouragement. It's going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, but in the right way also.
Yeah. Yes. What you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And
Right. And don't get a sponsor. I'm sorry, one more thing. Don't get a sponsor who has like 15 guys. Try to find a sponsor who has like maybe one or two, because they're going to be overwhelmed. They're not going to be able to support you the way you need to be supported.
yes, that's good information. That's really good information. And also remembering that God, His grace is something that can cover us, in the middle of the struggle. So it's so important. And you said something earlier as far as, maybe not even going to the pastor because we don't even know what they're struggling with, but finding
Hmm.
that you can actually go to and in the support, group and yeah, and not finding someone that has so many different people because how good are they going to be to you? Because they don't have the time to dedicate to you. Yeah.
Hmm. Exactly. I've heard too many stories about that one. That's why I wanted to make sure I communicate that, because men get discouraged when that happens. I can't do this. I can't find anybody. And then they just give up and they just go right back to what they were doing before, which was the self-destructive behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. My goodness, Christian, thank you so much for your honesty and for your insight. This has been amazing. And I just hope that today's conversation just remind men that you're not alone. You aren't, there's so many men dealing out there with this and healing is possible. And freedom also has to begin first with you actually acknowledging that there is an issue, not your wife, not your next door neighbor. It has to begin first with you and then actually putting everything into action. So, Christian, thank you so, so much. Any final words that you have before we actually end our conversations with Z today?
So just you have to make Jesus the center of it.
Yeah.
If you don't put Jesus at the center of your recovery, it's not a real recovery,
Mm,
because you need his strength to get you through what you need to get through. And if you haven't been through it before, you don't know what I'm talking about, right? And what happens if you haven't been through, but you're still stuck in the addiction, you just think it's daunting and I can't do this. You're right, you can't do this alone. You can't. And even if these guys have 20, 30 years of sobriety, if it's real sobriety, that true sobriety, they have Jesus at the center. If Jesus is not there, then it's not, you don't have the whole story. That's what I'm saying. And I know I might get some hate over that type of comment, but like, you need to have Jesus there at the center of it. Otherwise, you're not truly sober from all things, not just porn.
wow, that's awesome. So, Christian, where can people find you? Because I know you said that you don't, you're not out there as far as on social media and that sort of stuff. So, if they needed to find you and someone's like, oh my goodness, this guy just seems like a great guy who I can actually connect with, how could they find you?
So just go to Psychology Today and put my name in. That's really the only thing I have out there is Psychology Today. It's free for anybody to go on there. It costs us money to be on there, but it doesn't cost them money to be on there. So just go on there, put my name in there, Christian DiMola, DiMola, and it'll come right up, and you'll see my profile there. And then you can email me or call me, and we'll have a talk, a discussion, and we'll set something up.
Yeah. And we'll put all that information also in the notes as well of the podcast. But thank you again for being part of this conversation today. This is Zachyra Rodriguez with Soul Conversations with Z, Healing in the Raw. Thank you so much. Until next time.